action. Today is exciting. You'll see in just a moment that my shirt is different from what I'm wearing today, and that is because this is the very first Tinkering with Truth video that I'm posting on the YouTube channel. It was more of just like a monologue response to a customer that asked a question about exaptive innovation, and it kind of just riffed off into expressed manifestation and these three tiers I think of, or these levels of expressed manifestation that I go into for like 40 minutes of talking about it. Anyways, I finished the whole video, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I could post this on YouTube. And then I sent it to a couple of people, and they're like, dude, you got to give a preface as to like what this thing is before you just throw this on. So this is what I'm doing. This is one of what I hope are very a ton in the future, but this is me just saying this video is the first Tinkering of Truth, or the Doctrine of Carry. It is also talking at length, without being edited, without being like vetted, without even thinking that like, oh, this is going to turn into like an episode, about one of the things that that's been rolling in my mind for 2, 3, 4, 5 years now. And it's all kind of came about, articulated in this like 40-minute segment you're about to watch. These will also get better over time as my editing, as my knowledge, as my post-processing, as my story writing, storytelling, and scripting kind of evolve over time. These videos will get more engaging, more fun, more entertaining, educational, all that stuff. And it might even mean that I come back to this particular topic, or tinkering with truth topics that I talk about in the future, but in the short-term future, that in the long-term future I might come back to and be like, hey, look, my thoughts on this have evolved. My skills in editing and storytelling have definitely evolved. Now I'm going to redo this Tinkering with Truth video with all of that kind of in mind going into that next episode. So, and yeah, that's it. So the other thing too that I want to say is that in the description, I've listed a bunch of different books and philosophies, you could say, that I've kind of like mingled together into creating this kind of like working theory. And so it's not really that I pulled one segment or multiple segments from each of the books. It's more of like a nugget here, a practice here, a method there, and then kind of combined it all and then put my spin on it through my own experience to recognize that like, oh, this kind of seems like an operating principle of mine. I wonder how I would go about articulating it, and then this next 40 minutes is a demonstration of that. So enjoy. They will get better though, but enjoy. Kevin, thank you so much for your email. Okay, so it's called exaptation. Exaptive is the word. Exaptation is actually not like a word found in the dictionary, but it's the process of doing something exaptive. Exaptation actually comes from biology, where it's found that animals, nature in general, but animals specifically, will take a solution from, or a characteristic or a feature, and from their biomakeup, and then they will repurpose it for an entirely different purpose. So it's called finding solutions in disparate industries and then repurposing them for the context at hand in what would be considered a unique and novel way, to basically satisfy the problem that they have. So a good context would be birds, right? So birds initially had wings, and so what they did was they were like, okay, we need to create drag and we need to create uplift. So this is me projecting onto Mother Nature or evolution this monologue that it's having with itself when it comes to birds. So birds are like, okay, we've got these things called wings, but we need to figure out a way to actually, I think it was insulation first. So first they were like, okay, we've got these arms and we need to create insulation to keep our bodies warm in varying temperatures of the climate. And so what they did was they created feathers, and they created two different kinds of feathers. They created like downy feathers, or like an insulatory feather that sat beneath them. That's kind of like armpit hair, but imagine feathers that are like, it's what you have in pillows and in blankets and stuff like that. But it creates this insulation on the bird, and it keeps them warm.
So once Mother Nature or birds had figured this out, then they were like, oh, cool. Like, well, now we need to fly, and we need to figure out a way. How do we do that? And so then they created a second version using the same, basically the arms, right, the wings, and they created feathers that were super light, but they would create drag and uplift when a certain kind of force was applied to air, right? So birds, basically dinosaurs eventually became birds. So they have the insulation, and this is all from feathers, okay? So feathers, insulation. Then it has a utilitarian factor for transportation, which is now they're able to fly, right? So they created an environmental blockade against nature, against the weather, which was insulation. Then you could say the second stage of evolution was taking the same concept, which were wings and this idea of feathers, and then using it as a disruptive innovation for transportation, right? So now they can fly. Okay. And then it took it a step further, and they were like, oh, cool, maybe we could use this as an aesthetic thing to attracting mates in order to continue basically our lineage. So then the feathers took on color, it took on designs, it took on patterns, and basically portray to the opposite sex that, like, hey, look, we're healthy, we're beautiful, we're worthy of mating, right? So birds go from dinosaurs, right? You've got something like the T-Rex that has these tiny little arms, and it starts to insulate itself with feathers, and then its body changes, and then feathers become a means of transportation, and then feathers become a means for mating, right? So you get like peacocks, or you get like pelicans, or what are the pelicans? Yeah, pelican. No, not pelicans. What's the bird with a gigantic beak, and it's really beautiful? It's found in the Amazon. Anyways, the point is that is exaptation. Exaptation is taking something, a solution, from a disparate industry. In this case, it would be like, we need to figure out how to insulate ourselves. So nature or evolution finds a solution in a totally different industry, which you could say is feathers or cotton or an insulation, right? And then uses it in a totally different context, in a totally different industry, in order to satisfy the current demands that it needs. So then it was inference. Then it does the same again. It takes everything it has and it finds a solution from another industry, and then repurposes that solution from a disparate industry onto itself again. And now it learns how to fly using the same tools, mechanisms, resources, equipment, its genetic makeup it already has, right? So it's not like it does something outside of its context or out of its realm of resources. It just repurposes or reconfigures or remodulates what it already has with this new addition of like a solution from a disparate industry being brought into this context. Okay, so now it flies, and then it goes, oh, cool, we could repurpose this even further. So now we're not going to have them wings not only be insulation, we're not even going to have them be transportation, a means for transportation. We're now going to use them also for mating. So then it looks over and it goes, okay, again, this is me trying to project onto evolution that it has this like conscientious way of going about figuring this out. But then it's going like, okay, what is the opposite sex attractive to? It's attractive to these certain colors or these certain patterns or these certain design elements. Okay, we're going to graph those onto our feathers, and now we're seen as the most beautiful, but also the most beautiful of our species, while at the same time just using the same thing we already had, and at the same time using it to fly and using it to keep us warm. That's exaptive innovation. That's exaptation. And what I am wanting to do is, it's like this realm of, it's like a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche. Okay? But innovation, I would say that there's 3 acts of expressive manifestation. Okay? The first one you could say is creativity. Okay? So what is creativity? Well, based on the doctrine of Carey, creativity or creation at all is the act of bringing forth or manifesting something that is novel or unique. In other words, it's never been done in that specific way. However, when it comes to creation, that doesn't mean that it actually has utility. That means it actually solves a problem, or that there's actually even demand to have this solution or this problem solved. Okay, it's a lot like most art. Any kind of art, it's more of just an expressive manifestation of the individual, creating something that is unique and novel. Okay, so that's the first stage of what I would call expressive manifestation. The second would be called invention. So according to the doctrine of Carey, an invention is both unique and novel, but also solves a unique problem. Okay, or it solves a problem. So you can look at the patent office, all right, USPTO, and you can go to the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and you'll find not thousands, not hundreds of thousands, not millions, but tens of millions of patents for inventions, right? And what these are they are unique and novel, like creation, right? The first level of expressive manifestation, but then also they solve a unique problem, right? So now it's the second stage of expressive manifestation, which is invention. However, although there are tens, even probably hundreds of millions of patents, you don't see like 99% of any of them. And the reason is because even though it solves a unique problem, it doesn't mean that there is a demand sufficient to want to pay to have that problem solved by a larger market, whether that's a niche or it's a submarket or it's a market or it's an economy with multiple markets, submarkets, or niches found within that realm. Okay, so now again, going back to it, you've got creation, expressive manifestation level 1. Then you've got invention, expressive manifestation level 2. And this one is novel, unique, and solves a problem. This one is novel and unique, but doesn't necessarily solve a problem, and it doesn't necessarily mean that there is demand to have that problem solved through the means of paying for it with money to have that problem addressed. Okay, so level 1, creation. Level 2, invention. Level 3 is innovation. Okay, so innovation, the literal word, if you take the suffix ion at the end of it, innovation, ion means the process or reflexive process of the thing that it's a suffix on. Okay, so innovate and ion, innovation, means it's the process of innovating. That's what innovation is, the process of innovating. Okay, and what does that mean? Innovate means to, in my opinion, the doctrine of Carey, it's the expressive manifestation of bringing something to the market that is unique and novel. It solves a problem, and there is sufficient demand to have that problem solved. Okay, so that is innovation. You've got creation. You've got creation. Okay, you've got invention, and then you have innovation. And innovation is something unique and novel. It solves a problem, and people are willing to pay for it or expend effort, their own energy, oftentimes in the medium of a currency, in order to have that innovation solve a problem for them. Okay, so another thing too that I think is really, really sexy is oftentimes the act of creation falls into any sort of medium. It can be a thought, it can be an image, it can be an actual word, it can be a piece of art. It's the same thing when it comes to inventions. They can be visible and they also can be invisible. And what I mean by that is that when I think of like an invention, I think of all the inventors, the tinkerers of the 1800s, right? Where they create some little mechanical device and it's really cool, it's novel, it's unique, it solves a problem. But there's also this whole other world that what I would say is like multiple orders of magnitude greater, that's larger, that is invisible, that are also inventions. And what do I mean by that? I'm talking about like processes, systems, workflow automations, guidelines, rules, culture, those kinds of things are invisible. They're intangible. However, they're still unique and novel, and they also solve a problem. Okay, so when you create a process, I'm going to use like a very simple example. You know, say you're making yourself a bowl of cereal in the morning. Okay, you need a spoon, a bowl, cereal, milk. Okay, and so what you do is you don't create an invention by taking two different cereals and combining it into the same bowl. Okay, you don't do that. What you do is you go, all right, I'm going to come up with a process where I turn on a light, and by turning on the light, I'm gonna put all my spoons on this level higher than my bowls, and so I'm going to turn on a light, and it's automatically going to flip a trigger, and then the spoon is going to fall down while also having this bowl being pushed out of the shelf. It's going to fall into the bowl, and then it's going to go down a slide, and that slide is going to go down onto my countertop. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press another button, and that button is going to open up my fridge, and it's going to grab my milk, and it's going to bring it over to my countertop. It's going to pour the milk into my bowl, while at the same time I'm choosing which cereal I want, and I'm going to choose that, and then I'm going to pour it, and that's all going to happen in a matter of like 20 seconds. Okay, so a process that now took me a minute now takes me only 20 seconds, and it's automated. It's streamlined. Okay, that's an invention. Okay, it's novel, it's unique, right? And it solves a problem, which is like pouring myself cereal. This is a really, really dumb example, but pouring myself cereal takes me a minute, and I don't want it to take me a minute, and I don't want to do all the work. I want it to take me 20 seconds, and I don't want to do half the work. Okay, so it's an invention, but are people actually going to pay for that invention? Like, is this an invention that like there is demand for this solution to be made, and people are willing to pay to save themselves 40 seconds in port? Probably not. Otherwise, we would have this in every single home. Okay, so but you see how that's an invention, but it's not really tangible, right? It's invisible. It's intangible. It allows you to. It is a solution, and it's unique and it's novel. However, it's not like a tinkering tool that an inventor created in the 1800s. It's like a little gadget, right? So you've got intangibles and you've also got tangibles. Okay, now bring this a step further. When you get to innovation, creating something novel and unique that has value, right? That solves an actual problem, and then so much value that there is demand by a larger subset group of people or companies or brands that want and are willing to expend their own medium of energy, oftentimes in the form of currency, in money, to have that solution. It can be both physical, tangible, or it can be invisible, intangible. So you get things like cost innovations, you get system innovations, you get pricing innovations, you get all these like invisible innovations that could happen on multiple tiers of a business, where you come up with a unique way to tweak a system, you test it, you validate that the system works, that this new solution actually saves a ton of time, and it's such a good innovation that actually saves not only time, it saves hundreds of thousands of dollars by just making this tiny little tweak. And you could say that's an iteration, it's not an invention, but it's an iteration, it's not an innovation. However, I look at that as that is unique, that is novel, that solves a problem, and there is demand to have that problem solved by giving money to do it, or expending energy in order to change systems or tweak systems and processes in order to have that new innovation. Okay? And now most innovation happens through what in my opinion is, I'm sorry, this is a 16-minute rant, but this is something I'm super, super passionate about, and I want to make it so that I have at least documentation of me talking about this. Okay, so what is it? You've got now these different layers or these tiers of innovation. You've got disruptive innovation that's like, and sustainable innovation. And both of these, sustainable innovation, you could say, is Kaizen, and a the Kaizen approach to constant improvement through iteration and experimentation. Tiny, incremental little things until you fall upon either some compounding huge change, which looks like an innovation, a sustainable innovation, or you're innovating, you're iterating and iterating and iterating until you fall upon a really, really great idea. Okay? So that's sustainable innovation. Disruptive innovation is oftentimes it's something that cannot be predicted. It's not something that you couldn't look back into history and be like, this is going to be a thing. Yep. It's only in after it having happened where you're like, oh, that was disruptive. We know because it totally changed a market or the world or an industry. So two great examples would be the light bulb when it came to Thomas Edison, right? So people were just like, oh, like how could we improve the candle, right? Or kerosene light or gas light, through kerosene. And people would have said, make them bigger, make them larger, put more candles throughout your house. Like it would be that like, you couldn't even call that an iteration. It's just more of like an amplification of what already exists, right? And then Thomas Edison basically willed it into existence, this idea of like, no, we're going to create cheap, affordable, instantaneous light that runs forever, and it's going to power everything. It's going to power our whole lives, and I'm just going to use the light bulb as a form to show forth this. And then it was afterwards that it was like, oh my gosh, that was super disruptive. The second example would be with Henry Ford. This is a quote that's often quoted in like business and innovation and all that stuff, but people are like, if Henry Ford had asked people what they wanted, what would they say? People would be like, well, we want faster horses, right? Saying that like the common means of transportation was horses, and finite thinking, or the way people think, is very iterative, and it's just like, I just want something better, faster, or cheaper than what already exists. So what's better? Faster horses than the current horses that we have, right? So then cars come along, and obviously that disrupts everything. It changes the geographic, literally towns and cities and countries, because now roads are being built way larger to accommodate different flows of traffic, where cars were much larger and wider rather than just carts, So anyways, it changed the geographic makeup of America and everywhere else, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, the point I'm trying to make, though, is that the second form of disruptive innovation, okay? So we've got sustainable innovation, we've got disruptive innovation, and then we have exaptation. So what is exaptation? Exaptation, as I said, is finding a solution in a disparate industry, right? An industry that has nothing to do with yours, and then repurposing that solution within your context that is unique, that is novel. So it's already satisfied that first level of expressive manifestation, which is creativity. It solves a problem. Okay, so what's that? That's an invention. That's level 2 of expressive manifestation. And then it's also innovative, because there is demand for it to have that problem solved. Okay, so now that problem's solved, and people are willing to pay for it or expend energy, oftentimes, like I said, in the form of currency, money, to have that problem satisfied. Okay, so now we've got exaptation. So what is exaptive innovation? Exaptive innovation is... Do you hear my dog? Someone's at the door. Someone's at the front door. Okay. All right. So what is exaptive innovation? It is the process of finding solutions in disparate industries and repurposing those solutions within your context in such a way that it's unique, novel, solves a problem, and there is sufficient demand to have that problem solved in the means of people paying to have that solution made. Okay? And I have found that no one's coined this. No one's like said this. It's just more of like, I tinker and I invent and I do this all day long. I come up with processes, I come up with vertical integration systems, I iterate, I design, I invent, I tinker, I source, I manufacture, I produce, I promote, like all this different stuff. And it's basically like, what is this? What is this thing? And if I could boil it down to its essence, it's finding out what people want and then having them get it through you profitably. And this other idea of like, there's no such thing as raw, genuine creativity, uniqueness. It's just a new mix of what already exists. So if you take, again, these concepts, you build upon them, and then what you do is you go, okay, find out what people want and have them get it through you. And if we use this context, it would be, there is a real need to conveniently protect gun scopes of varying barrel diameters on the front and the back of those scopes, and in such a way where it instills peace of mind and a feeling of security to the owner, and is also convenient to install and take off at a moment's notice, and enhances their workflow in one way, shape, or form, such that people are willing to pay for it. And so what do? I go, okay, I created a camera lens cap for camera lenses. Why not just scale that down relative to whatever the 80% or more of most gun scope barrel diameters are on the front and the back, and then scale down my already current solution to, and still have an elasticity range. I might have to change like the silicone makeup, like the recipe, so that it has more elasticity, or it has a denser elasticity, so it's not as stretchy. But basically modify and adapt it, scaling it down in such a way that it both accommodates that range, that 80% or more of most gun scope barrels, right? So that one version can be stretched and applied to 80%, at least 80% of all of the gun scopes being purchased in the market, come up with a prototype for that product, and then reach out to a community, my community, a community, early adopters in general, and go, I'm thinking about creating this product. There's this problem in the market, and I have innovated. I've taken an exaptive innovation. I've taken my silicone lens cap in one industry, and I've just repurposed it for another industry, which is now gun scopes. And yes, it solves the problem, but is there sufficient demand for it? And then I can test, I can do like a what's called a rapid test, or rapid demand test, where I send it out to the market, send it out to people who might be interested into it, and I say, look, for the next 24 hours, I need people to put down their hard-earned money, $5 or whatever, in order to know if there is sufficient demand for me to move forward in actually making this product, to then bring it to a larger market. And this larger market would be early adopters or the crowdfunding arena, and then eventually it would be the early majority, which would getting into e-commerce, and then eventually what I would call the mainstream majority, which would be retail, and then laggards, which would be the thing. And that's the innovation loop cycle, is what I just described right there. But what I'm trying to say is exaptive innovation, the process of creating a unique and novel expressive manifestation that solves a problem that people are willing to pay for, that you just, through just finding a bunch of other solutions in disparate industries and then stacking them on top of one another in order to create this product. And then that's it. Okay, so the last thing, oh my gosh, it's 26 minutes. Oh man, okay, so let me finish this. Okay, so just because you have come up with an innovation doesn't mean that it's going to be successful, because there's this second part to innovation, which is just because you have an innovation of any sorts, doesn't mean that now all the work is done. It means, no, I need to now put on my marketing and promoting hat, and I need to actually bring it to the world. So this is what I find like super, super fascinating, because what you have really is, you could have a piece of art, okay, something creative, level 1 expressive manifestation. You could have something like 2, it's just an invention, right? Or you could have something like 3, innovation. And within that context, you have sustainable, you've got disruptive, and then you've also got this new tier, this new Carey trademark tier called exaptive innovation. But in all of these 3 realms of expressive manifestation, they can all basically be like, all 3 of them, here's a good way to articulate it. All 3 of them are still incredibly dependent upon one's ability to market and promote it to the right people, right? Because you have like creativity, right? You've got art. Like this is AI art that I, through engineering prompts, came up with these fun designs, okay? But then you get stuff like, Vincent van Gogh, right? Or Picasso, who they come up with art that's unique and novel. Doesn't really solve a problem, right? And there really isn't like a sufficient demand in order to bring that product or bring that thing to market. However, thanks to Vincent van Gogh's notoriety, because after he died is when actually his art went through the roof in value, or Picasso, because of his actual reputation and his fame while he was alive, it was in the ability to market and promote it that actually, you could say, actually is what brought it to be, you could say, successful, where people are willing to expend their energy, oftentimes in the medium of currency, in order to have that expressive manifestation, that art, that invention, or that innovation. Okay, so you get artists, and this is a great example. My dad is a licensed sculptor for Harley Davidson. He's a bronze sculptor. He's one of the very few people that still knows the entire lost wax chase process of sculpting. In other words, taking something from clay and going through the entire process up until it's a patinaed bronze sculpture. And he does it in a very, very particular niche. It's for antique motorcycle racing. So that's his gig. His gig is, I create sculptures, bronze sculptures of antique motorcycle racing, oftentimes highlights of motorcycling history, dating back to like pre-1950s and later, and earlier, and that's it, right? So you could say, and my dad would agree with this, his is a level 1 expressive manifestation. And fitting into that one category. It's unique and it's novel. But my dad has been incredibly successful doing this for 30 years, right? And it's because my dad has the craziest, weirdest, unique ability to be able to market and promote and network with all the right people that are willing to drop $20 to $50 to $100,000 on a single sculpture. That my dad doesn't have to do word of mouth marketing, social media marketing. He doesn't have to have an invention. He doesn't have to have an innovation, like nothing. It's just, you could say he's a watered down version of a Picasso or a Vincent van Gogh, in the sense that he created a level 1, in my opinion, a level 1 expressive manifestation, but then has this ability to be able to market, promote, and network with all the right people in order to make it a success so that he can continue doing it forever. And so what is exaptive innovation? I want to build stuff. I want to find out what people want, and then I want to have them get it through me profitably, right? And profitably is both words. It's profitably as in like, I make money, I make a profit, but then also like prophetically, like profitably. You could say like PROPHET right? Profitably, where it's like, whoa, I didn't know there was a need for this until I saw it. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I need to have it. It's like, I didn't know that that thing was going to be needed either. I just tinkered and explored and experimented and just was like, what do people want? Like, oh, people don't know what they want. So I got to find out what people don't want. And in the case of the gun scopes again, what do people want? People don't know what they want. They want faster horses. They want more candles in their house. But it's not that. What they don't really know what they want. What they don't want, though, is they are very, very clear about. It's like, I don't want to feel uneasy that my expensive glass in my gun scopes is likely getting scratched or bumped or broken or crack. I want to have I want it. I don't want an inconvenient way of just like, oh, I've got to carry a bunch of other stuff and a bunch of other caps, and you know, I don't know where they go, and they're hard to put on and all this stuff. Like, you figure out what people don't want about a thing, and then you create, in my opinion, an exaptively innovate a solution, and then validate it with an early, I'm talking niche market, a tiny subset of people, to validate that you should move forward with bringing it to a larger group, which is in my case crowdfunding, to then bring it to an even further larger group, which would be early majority e-commerce, and so on and so forth, until you've created a new product. And so when I come on and I'm talking to people and I'm like, I just want to create what I feel are really cool products and then share them with the world. That is all true, but like, it goes 100 layers deep. 100 layers deep in what that actually means, because in my technical, jargon-dense version of that simple sentence, find out what people want and have them get it through me prophetically, profitably, or I just want to create really cool products. I just want to invent really cool products and then share them with the world. What I'm really trying to say is, I want to exaptively innovate in such a way that empowers other people to do more of what they love doing. And what that really is trying to help tell my story through going through this own process of mine of exaptively innovating and documenting my journey, documenting my story, so that people can look on, and I think about this, like, people look back on this decades from now, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years from now, and they're like, whoa, Carrie was doing the process while also documenting the process. And now we have a blueprint for how we can do it ourselves, how I can exaptively innovate, how and we'll just use a random scenario, how a mom she's got 2 kids, and say she's a single mom, she's got 2 kids under the age of 5, and she's barely making ends meet. She can watch, this is me like idolizing, right? Like, okay, idealizing. In a perfect world, this is what's going to happen in 50 years. The internet might not even be here in 50 years. We might all be dead. But my feeling is that if this ends up happening, this woman, this mother who has 2 kids, is single, she's trying to make ends meet, falls upon my videos 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now and goes, oh, this kid has figured out a way, this kid, this guy, this dude, this weird, quirky inventor has figured out a way to be able to look outside of his perspective, outside of his context, and find solutions that have worked for other people. And I wonder, and then he's taken those solutions and then brought them into his own world, into his own domain, and then tinkered with it and explored, and it actually made his life 100 times better because he figured that solution out. And so this mother then watches the video in a perfect world. She then goes, oh my gosh, I wonder if I can do that. I can apply that same blueprint, that same process for experimenting, okay? Applying the scientific method of going, this is my current situation, this is my target condition that I want. And I assume that if I can look outside of my realm, my current world, and I can, as Carrie tried to do for decades and documented the whole thing, find a solution. Maybe another mother has this idea or this tactic. Maybe 90% of her stuff is garbage, but this 10%, this little nugget of wisdom, oh, that's really relevant. That really resonated with me. I can apply that right now in my day-to-day life. So she's going to go into a disparate industry, which is another mother, right? Taking that solution, applying it to her in rearing her kids and trying to make ends meet, and finds that it solves a problem. And it solves a problem for her. And she doesn't need it to make money. She doesn't need it to make. What she needs is it to help her rear her kids, pay bills. And through documenting and trying to do this with new products and share them with the world, my hope is that in documenting the process and then also documenting the evolution of the development of my products through what I'm coining exaptive innovation, it eventually gathers a following of people that are like, I love Carey. He's this weird dude, so much energy, it'll exhaust you. But the guy's fun and the guy's creative and he's got all these weird ideas and philosophies and it seems to be working out for him, and I just want to be a part of the journey so that it gets to the point where this funds my lifestyle and funds it so that I can all I'm doing is not having to create systems and businesses and processes and all this stuff. And instead, I'm experimenting, I'm tinkering, I'm creating, but I'm doing so by looking into the world and finding people and then figuring out what they want and then having it get it through me by me exaptively innovating and then bringing that to my audience, my tuna tribe members, my community, and going, is this a product that I should move forward with, that we should move forward with, that we should create and try to collaborate and try to fix together? And then if their response is like, oh my gosh, yes, Carey, or in what has happened in the past, they're like, yeah, cool idea, unique, novel, solves a problem, but there's not enough demand for that. I can be like, okay, cool, I'll trash that idea, we'll move on to the next one. And get to this process where it's just, there's almost instantaneous feedback loop where it's me and the community, we become as one. And this idea of like, we're looking for ways to come up with new cool products, and then I'm sharing it with my world, sharing it with the world, and then they're validating for me and telling me if this is a good idea or not, that we should move forward together in pushing this idea or this solution, this exaptive innovation forward to the point where it helps humanity, but doing it to the point where then I'm not focusing on fun products, I'm focusing on world-changing problems. And we're inventing and innovating, and we're exaptively innovating solutions, intangible and tangible, to solving real world problems, energy crisis, hunger, home displacement, families, and it's not me going like, I'm this Nikola Tesla, Leonardo da Vinci genius. I believe that the real genius is in the collective community. That through engaging with the right person that's asking them the right questions and engaging them will help to emerge the right solutions. So the real genius is not even the collective genius, it's in this symbiotic relationship of someone tapping into the collective genius of the community and then pulling out of them through ethnographic research and going through all of these different other crap that I'm dealing with. 40 minutes is ridiculous. And doing so that then we come up with like the weirdest but most novel and unique solutions to problems that people are willing to pay for. And then I don't even have to promote it. I don't even have to market. I don't even have to bring it to the world, because that's already been baked into the community, because I have 100,000 Tuna Tribe members all across the world, and they're going, okay, how do we solve the energy crisis with Carey? And it's like, I don't know. I'm not a mechanical engineer, but I'm sure out of the 100,000 Tuna Tribe members, there's probably 20, 30 maybe mechanical engineers and electrical engineers that have insights on how to address very, very, very particular technical problems of this product. And if not, then it's likely that of the 100,000 Tuna Tribe members, they know someone outside of the 100,000 Tuna Tribe members that is a mechanical engineer who might know how to actually address and fix this problem. And it becomes this like altruistic, synthetic, combined effort to exaptively innovate together. And that is where I will leave it. Hopefully that wasn't too long. Did all of that make sense? Oh man, I'm so sorry. Oh man, I should have done more jump cuts and made it like more fun and, you know, engaging. But man, this is what happens. Do you see my neck? See how it's getting red? So this happens when I get super excited. I have like all these capillaries on my neck and they get really, really close. But when I get super passionate about talking about something, my neck flares up and people think I'm having like an allergic reaction to something. I'm not. I'm just stoked. Oh man. Okay. So if you have any questions, let me know. But if not, that is my video for today for you guys, for you.